Alright class, this will be the first video I will produce for the lessons I promised you, and the other ones I will do it subsequently. In this video we are looking at the kingdom plantain, but at this level I'll be looking at the simple plants that are made up of single cell, two cells, that is the cells that are at cell plants at the cell level, and some plants at the tissue level, which we regard to as lower plants. So we're going to look at them in this very particular video. The next video we're going to look at the higher plants, those ones that are made up of multicellular plants, like those ones that can produce seed and so on and so forth. So let's look at the first one, kingdom plantain. Under kingdom plantain, we have about three divisions or three phylums under this kingdom plantain. Now, the first division is the Talophyta, then we have the Bryophyta, and then the Trichophyta. The Talophyta are usually have green, and they are usually green in color, brown and red. Most of them are algae, chlamydomonas and the Asparagera, single cell, and also the cells that are made of plants that are made up of two cells, like Spirogera. And then we have Volvox also. They actually are single independent cells, but they usually live in colony, they usually live in group. So they are regarded as a single cell organism, but they are plants since they undergo photosynthesis mode of nutrition, that is autotrophic mode of nutrition. Then we have other plants that are called Bryophyta. They are usually simple plants, are somehow complex than Talophyta, and Talophyta, there are liverworts and moss. Then we have Trichophyta. Trichophyta are actually the higher plants. So the only one we're going to discuss in this first video is the Talophyta and the Bryophyta. Now the Talophyte has also subdivisions into three groups. We have the red algae, we have the green algae, and then we have the brown algae. Now let's look at this Talophyte. Generally, Talophyte, they are flat plants. They are usually green and short twigs actually. So these organisms are the Talophytes plants that we are referring to. So this is the Volvox in colony. This is a Spirogera made up of more than one cell that link each other, forming a long thread. These ones are usually in aquatic animal, in the aquatic environment. They are usually found in the seas and some marshy areas. All of these are plants. They don't have true roots, but let's look at their characteristics, that when you see them you will know that these ones, they are referred to as Talophyte. Most Talophytes, they are microscopic. They can be seen only with the aid of microscope. Some of them are unicellular, others are multicellular. As I told you, like Volvox, they are unicellular. Like Chlamydomonas, they are unicellular. Like Euglena, they are unicellular. They are actually algae. They are plants, but they are made up of a single cell, which can make their food through the means of photosynthesis. The multicellular ones are the ones that are made up of two cells, like algae, and also some of them can be in form of in a group actually. So they are multicellular plants plant organism. There are also simple aquatic and plant, which means they are not complex as such. Yeah, they are very simple, easy to distinguish, easy to study them. They have no true roots, stem, and leaves. Normally, the plants we have around us, they are made up of roots, made up of stem, and they're made up of the leaf or leaves. But this one, they don't have these ones. They don't have leaf. They're just like a single plant like that with something that looks like leaf. They are called frond, which they use to for photosynthesis. Those frond contain some chloroplast, which aids their photosynthetic mode of nutrition. And then we have also there are also unicellular cell, which means they are made up of single cell. They are autotrophic mode of feeding. They make their own food by themselves like normal plants. They are algae. There are filamentous, which means they look like a thread filament. They look like a thread of filament or hair. And a good example of this algae is Spirogera, which looks like a thread. That's what they are. They are actually cells that are connecting each other at each end. So they are reproduced bisexually and also asexually. So some of these plants, they can reproduce using gametes. They can also reproduce with spores. Without gametes, they can reproduce their individual. The second one is the bryophyta. Now, bryophyta is a bit higher plant than the thallophyte. Thallophyte are usually single cell organisms, but some can be in form of tissue. But this one has more than one cell, has more than two cells. So they are bryophyte, they are multicellular plants. But there's something that distinguish them from the other plants which we're going to look at. Now, a good example of bryophyta are the moss and also the liverworts. Now, the moss, this is the liverworts. This is the actual plant, the liverwort. This is the diagram of a liverwort. If you are asked to draw, you should know this diagram. Just draw something like this and then label it. Now, the archigospore is just like a stem that holds the reproductive organ. This one is also like a stem that holds the reproductive organ. This is the leaf itself. This is the root, the the rhizoid beneath it, where it is used to absorb water from the soil. It actually is inside the soil. Moss, we usually see moss plants commonly around us. You see them growing on the walls. They are usually found in the damp places, in a place that is somehow marshy and always wet with water. That's where they usually grow. They look like a grass, like a carpet grass, very greenish on the wall or in a crack of a wall or stone. That's where they are usually found. So they are simple plants with not clear distinguishing or distinct stem, leaf, and also roots. So let's look at the characteristics of this type of plants. Now, they are characterized by what? Multicellular plants. Actually, they are characterized by a lot of high number of cells. They are differentiated into tissues, you see, which means they're made up of more than one cells joining themselves together. They're not up to an organ yet. They are still at tissue level. Just like we have Hydra as a tissue organism in animal. So these plants are bryophyta. They are tissue organism in the plant kingdom. Please note the difference. They lack true roots. As I told you, there's no definite root. They are non-vascular plants, which means usually in higher plants there are vessels in which materials such as water and food are conducted from where they are produced to the various parts of the body of the plant, to the stem, to the roots, and also to the fruit. There's a vessel or like a blood vessels in our body that transport fluid or blood, that transport blood in our body. They too, they have something that look like that vessel, which is called vascular bundles. The vascular bundle is made up of xylem and phloem that transport nutrient to the plants. These plants, they don't have this. They grow in a moist places, as I told you. That's where you see the moist places, damp area. That's where you found them. So they are mostly terrestrial. You hardly see them inside water, but some of them can be found outside water. But technically, there are something that I want us to note about this organism: their mode of reproduction. They can reproduce asexually by spores. They can also reproduce sexually using gametes or sex cells like sperm and egg. Now, this is an example of moss plant that has different generation. It's actually called alternation of generation. At other generation, they reproduce sexually, and another generation they reproduce asexually. Now look at this. Let's just start the process of reproduction here. Here, usually male and female plants, they meet together, they release their cells, and then to fertilize themselves in order to get an organism. So this generation is called haploid generation. Actually, it's called haploid generation. This is the haploid generation. Well, this one, the other one is the diploid generation. Let me just check this one on. This is the diploid generation, because here we have sperm and the egg cell fused together to give us two number of set of chromosomes here, but this one's only one set of chromosomes. So the seed is fertilized, giving us an embryo, and embryo is developed to germinate into a gametophyte. This gametophyte will produce spores, resulting to produce spore, and this spore is actually, it's made up of male and female seeds. Let me just put it that way, whether you understand it better. This is a male and female seed. Each spore will grow into male and female seed. So each of the spore can germinate depending on the environment it found itself. One can germinate to male, then the other one can germinate to female. So it has now, this is the germinated spore, which is called protothema, and then the protothema will now develop, grow into a full grown moss, which is called gametophyte. But this one, gametophyte, and then this one is sporophyte. Actually, this is the sporophyte organism, because it's going to develop spore, but this one gametophyte because it's going to develop gamete, female's sex cell and then male sex cells. So it will release during fertilization. The organism will release its egg, which is the archegonium, and then the female one will release the sperm, which is called archidium. So they will now fertilize themselves to give us another generation of these very plants known as sporophyte generation. So that's why we say it has alternation of generation. Another generation can develop as a spores, and then another generation can form as an animal. So if you have any question regarding this very video, please, you can WhatsApp me, put your question on our WhatsApp, or you can equally write it on the Teams, and then I will give you more explanation on that. Thank you for listening.